another episode of Keep the High Balls Low. As always, I'll be your host, Lewis Barr. I'm delighted to say that tonight I'm joined by a Spurs legend. There's also a few other clubs in there that I'm sure we'll get on to as well. But tonight I'm joined by Paul Miller. Paul, firstly, thanks very much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We'll just go right back to the start if that's okay. You grew up in Stepney in London. How was life growing up, and when did you first fall in love with football?
So I'm an East End boy, proper East Ender, born in Whitechapel Hospital, so within the sound of Bow Bells. Quite a rarity nowadays, as you can imagine. There was two ways really when I was growing up. It was sport or crime. It wasn't a lot else to do. Schools wasn't great. But I mean, I had a good family, and we all lived quite close together. You did in those days. You lived around the corner from your nan and your aunts and uncles, sort of thing, and your cousins. So I suppose with football, I sort of fell in love with it when I was 5 or 6 years old. Got all the annuals, your Christmas annuals, Charles Buck, and whereas there wasn't too many coming out in those days. And I suppose I started playing organised football at 7 years old in play centres. Play centres were places that kids whose parents worked, you stayed in after school and you play against other schools. And so as a 7, 8 year old, that's where my first competitive games were, played in playgrounds in schools after school. And it sort of progressed from there really. And then I went for district trials and things like that, and I got in and school and county, and obviously played for London and whatever. But before then, prior to that, I joined a team called Senrab, which was affiliated to Chelsea. So as a 10, 11-year-old, I went to Chelsea in their academy. I was over in Mitcham in South London, and I was obviously in East London, so I had to get on 2 trains and a bus to get there. You imagine letting a 10, 11-year-old do that now. Thankfully, I got left home from one of the chief scouts. We used to drop a lot of the boys off on the way, and that was fine. But Chelsea had a great academy in those days and produced lots of good players, young players. And this is when Dave Sexton was managing. And I suppose then it started to get busier at 13. A lot of scouts were knocking on the door every day. Remember, there's no mobiles. They phoned you up at home and come round for a cup of tea, and they come and sit with your mum and dad and you for like 2-3 hours, sitting in your front room, talking about the good things of their clubs. And at 13, I started realised Chelsea would probably be the team for me because they were having financial problems. They just built a big new stand, and they sold 2 of their best players, Osgood and Hudson. And I felt, no, I don't really fancy that. I think they're going to struggle a little bit, and they did actually over the next 15, 20 years, certainly to 15. So I then went and started other clubs. Palace, who Malcolm Allison was there at the time, was a great leader, Terry Venables. West Ham, Arsenal, and Tottenham. Also went up north to Man United, had a week up there, and Ipswich and Coventry, but was never going to leave London. I had a close family. So I went to Tottenham, and I liked it, and I ended up signing for them. And Bobby Moore, a family friend, said to me, sign for Spurs, I think that's your best choice. And he was obviously right. He was a good friend of ours, Bobby. God bless him. And so I went to Spurs as a 13-year-old and stayed there for the next 15 years, really. So that was the East End thing, really, of going from there to becoming a footballer. And I never regretted it.
You were saying at the start, Paul, that it was either football or crime. I mean, were you ever close to... I mean, I'm guessing you had maybe friends or people that you knew on the estate that maybe went down that road. Do you think that football saved you, or do you think you were always going to be okay anyway?
No, I had family got involved in it. Everybody had family involved in crime of some sort. I was no different. So, but I mean, I never even thought about that really. I think because football got hold of me at a young age, it sort of captured me. That was it. I mean, I never hung around the streets. Remember, I was training most nights. I mean, at one stage when I was 13, 14. I was training at 4 different clubs. I was training at Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham and Crystal Palace, different night every week. You could do it in those days. You didn't have to stay with one, until you actually signed. The schoolboy forms were one of them. So I was busy. I was Saturdays and Sundays, obviously I was playing football as well for club sides and school, district, county, whatever. So I never really had time to do anything mischievous, if you like. So no, never looked at that.
And you grew up a Tottenham fan, Paul, is that right? I mean, what was it like going to watch Tottenham in the days?
Well, I never really grew up a Tottenham fan. I was a Tottenham fan when I went there. I was originally sort of I like Chelsea. So I never had any. My family weren't really much into football. My dad was more into greyhound racing and betting and probably boxing. We might maybe more a boxing family really, which is typically East End. And then no, so I didn't really feel I was going to always be a footballer. So I just missed the question now. I've just lost it again. What was the question again?
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. It was just who did you go and watch when you were growing up? I mean, obviously when you're training as a young boy.
My dad never took me to football really because we didn't go to football. So I think the first ever game I went to was Spurs and Man City. Just a coincidence because a neighbour, he was a big Spurs fan, and his son, he asked my mum and dad, "Can I take Paul to watch Spurs play?" And I found out later this was in 1969 because Steve Perryman was playing, and Man City come and beat us 3-0. It was a year they won the league, I think, as well. They certainly cup in the league the year before, and they played in this red and black striped kit. It was fantastic. Obviously, AC Milan colours. I couldn't believe their kit. It was amazing. I stood on the shelf, with lots of other boys. So that was my first ever game. It was a coincidence that it was just Spurs. And I never really supported anyone. I quite like Chelsea because the King's Road and all the glamour they had with it. But I never really was a football supporter as such. Where I lived was West Ham, Arsenal and Tottenham, to be fair. That was all where I lived. It was an equal amounts of those teams. But I didn't support any one of them until I went to Spurs. And then of course, my allegiance changed. And that's it. And now all my family, my nephews, everybody supports Tottenham in my family.
What was life like when you became an apprentice playing and training with Tottenham? I mean, how was that for you, Paul? What was your did you have jobs to do? Were you cleaning boots and things like that?
Well, the thing is, I left school a year early. I didn't go to school a lot, to be fair, after I was 13, yeah. I should just go one day and just play. The day I had to go was when I played for the school. I had to turn up to go in the morning, and I played for school in the afternoon. The headmaster turned a blind eye. It was those days, that was how it was then. When I eventually left school, 15, we cleaned boots, we scrubbed the dressing rooms out, cleaned the toilets and baths and things like that. I mean, help with sweeping the gym, helping on the pitch sometimes when it was really bad weather. So you did all those jobs, and I think it didn't do you any harm, to be fair.
Do you think that's missing from the game now, Paul? I mean, I know up in Scotland that doesn't happen very often, especially with young apprentices.
It doesn't happen at all. Around now, they're called a different name. They're YTSs now, aren't they? Youth training scheme. I mean, it doesn't happen at all now. I don't think the kids would do it. I think they don't think they do it at home, let alone doing it when they go and sign for a club. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, when did you start to impress, Paul? When did you start to train with the first team and kind of catch people's eyes?
I suppose. I come through a very successful youth team. By the way, I've always played in successful sides. My district side was successful. My London boys team I played in produced 10 players who made it. Oh. It's never happened before, never happened since. 10 players. I'm talking about thousands of games between them, yeah? And some of them household names. So at Spurs, we sort of 7 or 8 of us eventually got in the team through that period. And luckily for me, when I went there, they were quite successful. But then, we had a bad time. We got relegated. And we came back up. And while we were in the second division, I think I was 17, 18 then, that was the time I really felt I should be playing. I kept knocking on the manager's door every week to ask him to play. You should be playing me, you should be playing me. And the reserve team we were in at the time, which was, and if you didn't play in the first team, you played in reserves. The reserve team we won the league by March. I think we won the first 32 games of the season. The football combination was a very tough league, believe me. Very physical and very demanding, and you'd have players playing who were first team players. My debut in the reserve team, I played against Paul Merrin at Ipswich. He was coming back from injury. So in those days, it was a proper league, not like today when there's not so many good leagues really for young players to learn their trading. That's why they go out on loan.
Do you think you learned just as much, as you said, about playing with against, not just with, but against guys like that, as much as you did from youth coaches and maybe the manager? Absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing like playing and getting experience and playing against good players who then you learn from, yeah? Next time I won't do that. I remember the first time I ever played against Joe Royle. I was in the first team. And he'd got to Bristol City by then. famous Evertonian Joe Royle, and he sort of like he knocked me all about everywhere, and I mean I was quite physical myself, but he got his bum in the way, back in the way, and he was so clever. And I thought to myself after, what did I do wrong? It's got to be a cat and mouse game. So when you're playing against bigger fellas, you end up, and he was big lump then by then, yeah. So he's coming towards the end of his career. Is that you got to be a bit cute, a bit cleverer. So you certainly learn, yeah. Well, if you don't learn, you don't make it. Full stop.
Were you always a centre half, Paul? Did you play in other positions? Or?
Yeah, I played in centre half. Yes, at school, always, all the way through. But when I fell to Spurs, and there's probably a bit of genius from Peter Shreves, the youth coach who became a manager in the end. He started playing me at right back and at central midfield because we had some decent centre halves then. He wanted me to get a look at other ways of playing and appreciate how our players are. And so I played in the youth team mainly, in the reserve team. Played a lot of times in central midfield, a holding player, or at right back. So it's funny, really. I hardly played at all centre half until about 6 months before I played in the first team. But I was always going to play centre half, if you know what I mean, yeah? I was never not going to be a centre half. The other place is just to help my all-round game.
Yeah.
Which it did help. I think you find Harry Maguire did the same thing. Harry Maguire was a midfield player throughout his early days, yeah? And then played centre half, which is why he's a player, isn't he? He can pass and whatever. Just to bring it up to the modern thing, yeah?
You spend a season on loan. You go to Norway with Skeid Oslo. I think that's just before you make your debut, Paul.
Yeah. So that was Skeid of Oslo. So what happened is that this is when we're in the second division, and I'm knocking on the manager's door every week, driving him mad. Why not playing? And then come March, Alan Brazil, great friend of mine, one of your fellow Scots, yeah, he says to me, "Look, I'm going to America for the summer." You remember at the time Americans had all the stars, Cruyff and Bobby Moore and Pelé and whatever, Beckenbauer, and they wanted young players to run around for them, yeah. So Alan said, "I'm going there," and I spoke to Bobby Moore, who was out. I think Bobby was in Detroit or something like that. And he said, "Yeah, come and play in our side. You play alongside me." I thought, dream in America, of course, yeah. All that's got to hold. So I spoke to Steve Perryman about it, and he was a mentor of mine. He said to me, "America, you'll have great fun. You'll come home with a few dollars and you'll have a great time. I'm not sure it'll do your football any good. Why don't you think about going to Scandinavia?" I said, "I didn't know they played in the summer." He said, "Yeah." Anyway, Steve spoke to one of his friends, a great friend of ours, Lars Ugland shipping family, who was in the FA, Norwegian FA then at the time. And there'd been a team that just got promotion called Skeid of Oslo into the first division. And they were looking for, a centre half who organised and be strong and whatever. So, I went up out there for a weekend and did very well in the match we played. I've never seen so much snow in my life because this was March, yeah. And an East End boy going out there. And I got, he said, "Look, a car, Adidas sponsor us, a lovely bungalow going to live on next to Hummer Column, the big ski jump place." And we look at it. The money was twice as much because obviously it's twice expensive there. But I'm going to have a meal every day in a restaurant because I never cooked it myself. My mum spoilt me, obviously. And so I signed a contract with him. So I bring the contract home to Berkshire, and his first words are, "Well, you won't be getting anything like this when you come back." So I went there from March to October. I missed the first 3 games because I wasn't registered in time. But we ended up finishing third, qualifying for the Uefa Cup, and I won Best Foreign Player of the Year. Wow. And then I came home. And when I came home, obviously, we'd signed the Argentinians, and things were different, yeah? But, I mean, then, our club had moved to another world sort of thing, Spurs. So we were back in the first division with 2 Argentinian superstars. So it had changed a bit.
Yeah. You mentioned Bobby Moore a couple of times. I mean, how good is that, having him as a friend and a mentor? And what kind of guy was he? Obviously, a great player as well.
Bobby Moore was one of the nicest, loveliest men you could ever meet. You'll never hear anyone who knew Bobby Moore slag him off, have a go at him. He was a magnificent player, great first touch, read the game unbelievably well. For someone who couldn't head the ball and who couldn't really run that quick, that shows you how good his brain was, yeah. And he was just marvellous. And when I first met him when I was a 13, 14-year-old, he was obviously like a god then, yeah. But he told me to sign for Spurs, and then later on when he was managing some pubs, sort of front of house in the East End, I got to know him better and did a few things with him as well off the pitch, appearances and stuff. But Bobby was a great friend and a lovely man, and he was my hero as a kid. I had two heroes growing up, Sinatra and Bobby Moore, and that wasn't because of West Ham; it was because of him. Yeah, always immaculate as well, immaculately dressed, and a great person for anyone to follow and be like. And he was a father figure as well. He was a great person for me, Bobby Moore, and had a big influence in my career actually. Brilliant.
Your debut. Do you remember your debut, Paul, for Tottenham?
Of course. So I've been driving Berkey mad to play, and we're not doing so well. We're mid-table. It's not going so well. 1 week we win, 1 week we lose. And he's starting to blood a few of the boys from the reserve team because we've got no more money left. We've spent it all on the Argentinians. And anyway, I've been in the squad a few times, but not been picked and played. I've been 13th man, carry the skips in, pour the tea out before the game and half time. Again, that's what they don't think they do that today either. I don't think they drink tea anymore, do they?
No.
Anyway, so I get called. I'm in the squad again for the Arsenal game at Highbury. Obviously, I know Highbury well. And I walk across the car park before it's about 4:30, and I see the chairman. I said, "Evening, Mr. Chairman," or "Afternoon, Mr. Chairman." He went, "Good luck tonight, young Miller." So I said, "I mean, good luck tonight. What are you wishing me good luck for? I'll be sitting with him in the director's box." So with that, we go in, we eat our tea and toast and scrambled egg, whatever. And or some Berkey says, "Okay, I'm making a couple of changes from Saturday. I think we drew on Saturday or something at home." He said that I'm bringing young Maxi in for his debut. And it's a part of my French here, but I'm going to go verbatim. He said, "He's been driving me fucking mad for a year about playing. So you've got your chance tonight, son, all right? Show me what you can do." Well, that was all the motivation I needed. And I did sort of say, "Yeah, I'll show you." First thing I did, I ran out of the room, went over and across to the office and phoned my mum and dad. Remember, again, there's no mobiles then. Phoned them at home and said, "You got to get to the game." I said, "What game?" I said, "The game tonight." He said, "The Arsenal game." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm playing." So mum and dad, I think had an early tea and got to the game with my brother and my uncle, and so they were there. It was 65,000 North London derby. Spurs had half the stadium. They took the North Bank, usual stuff, and it was a great debut. The only thing we lost in the last 5 minutes. Frank Stapleton scored. Barry Daines, our keeper, made a ricket, and he scored off it. So, but I played well and I kept my place.
Do you think it helped that you found out so late in the day as well? Do you think if you had a couple of days to maybe overthink it, do you think that would have been worse for you?
No, I think it'd been better. I should have been given more notice.
Right. Do you think that'd be better?
I think it was ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, we didn't even train together. I mean, because whenever we played, we had practice matches. You had reserves against the first team, and reserves would always beat the first team. By the way, always odds on. So even the day before, we were still having reserves, and I wasn't playing. Maybe it's Keith. Maybe listen, Keith had his own ideas, and it worked. So maybe he thought that would motivate me a bit more, but he didn't need to. I didn't need any motivation. I was born at 12. I was ready. I was ready as a kid.
Do you think having good senior pros also helped? I mean, did they talk to you before the game, or was it just a case of talking you through the game, Paul?
No, absolutely. I mean, Terry Naylor, Steve Perryman, John Pratt, 3 Londoners, by the way, who saw me as one of them, definitely helped. No, massively helped, and great lads as well. I mean, plus Glenn was a Londoner in the team as well. So Peter Taylor. Well, in actual fact, that night, Pat Jennings, our former goalkeeper and lovely man, we love. He was man of the match for Arsenal. We missed about 5 1-against-1s against him. He saved with his feet, everything, those big hands he's got. So actually, just funny. Pat, who I knew very well from a youngster, was playing against me in my first game.
You mentioned the Argentinians as well. I mean, how good was that team looking? Did you know that you could go on and have the success that you went on to have?
I think we all thought we had a chance. Sign of Ozzy and Ricky was one of the 4. Ozzy still today is one of my closest friends. I mean, but they brought something different. Ozzy made Glenn a better player. Which is unbelievable, really. That's why you're not sure which is the best player out of Ozzy or Glenn, because to make someone a better player, you've got to be a good player yourself. Well, you've got to be a great player yourself. But they took us to another level. I mean, even before they arrived, we'd have dozen pressmen there on a Friday. When after they arrived, we had 50 there on a Friday from all over the world. So it changed our club, changed our attitude. And us youngsters coming in, Ozzy would talk, we would see the things they did, which was better. And I suppose really we gradually got when we improved each season. Then we signed Archibald and Crooks, which was fantastic for us, and that took us to another level. And the following year, Ray Clemence, which was the final piece of jigsaw. And so we had 3 world-class players, Clemence, Hoddle, and Dalglish in our team. And many teams have got 3 world-class players. Trust me, even today.
In 8-1, Aston Villa were the champions of England, and Nottingham Forest had won the European Cup. I mean, from guys and girls my age and younger, people would find it hard to believe that they were the 2 best clubs at that time. I mean, how good were they teams back then, Paul?
Well, absolutely. And also, Ipswich won the Uefa Cup that year, 81. Europa, which is the toughest cup to win because, the Uefa Cup was tougher because the Champions League, you only got 7 or 8 decent countries. So you have 7 or 8 teams get through in the European Cup. When in the Uefa Cup, you'd have 3 or 4 from each of those countries. So you end up with 20 odd top teams in there. And so that was a very difficult competition to win. Plus, it was 3 more games, an extra round and 2-legged final. So Ipswich again won that. So you're talking about an unbelievable level at that time with Ipswich, Villa, Everton, Liverpool, ourselves, Forest. Certainly Forest, Ipswich, and Villa. They were very successful sides in late 70s, early 80s.
And Tottenham go on to reach the FA Cup final in 1981. What do you remember of the build-up to that game? I mean, it must have been, it's every boy's dream to play in an FA Cup final. Absolutely.
I mean, the reason you become a footballer is because of the FA Cup final. I mean, it's a bit different today, and some of your younger people won't realise it. But the cup final when I was growing up as a kid was started at 8 o'clock and finished at 6 o'clock at night, 6:30 at night. You then go out in the street or in a local park and practice and play and try and emulate the players you just seen on the telly, all day long.
Yeah.
So your dream was to become a footballer and play in a cup final. So when it actually happens, you get the semi-final, you win. There's a 3-week break before the final, and you go on top of the pops. You do Blue Peters. We had the song then, singing a song, and my room partner was Glenn Hoddle. And the night before the game, we're like 2 little kids, really, because we both remember watching the cup final. And then the morning of the cup final, he gets up and I said, "Go on, mate, put the kettle on, Glenn, yeah." And we prefer making our own tea rather than having it sent up. It's quicker. So he looks out the window to see what the weather's like because it was going to be raining. And as he looks out, I put the telly and I said, "Oh, you're on the telly here?" So he comes and he said, "What was it? Is it a goal or something?" I said, No, just look out the window again. You'll be on the telly." They had a camera on the hotel. So he's there looking out and I'm watching him. We're like 2 little boys laughing, right? Because he's putting his head out and he's putting it back, and then the commentator saying, and there's Glenn Hoddle having a look at the early morning weather, and no, he's not back. No, he's come back again. It was so funny, like playing a game with a telly. And of course, you got your cup final suits on and all the rest, and you go the right route to Wembley. The fans all know what route you're going on. You go down Wembley Way when there was a Wembley Way. You drive through, and there's thousands of Spurs fans there who got there early, obviously. And when you get dressing, we used to have a thing called telegrams that like it was read, but had been sent to you by your family, friends, and people you knew. So you have all the telegrams and little mementos left for you there, and everything else. And then you get in the tunnel eventually. We're going to meet the Queen Mum, by the way. We've been told the day before what etiquette to do to her, to say to her, and whatever if she speaks to you. And you're in the tunnel listening to Abide With Me. Now you've remembered this as a kid. You've heard Abide With Me being sung. Now it's been sung for us, 100,000 people. And we walk out, and they've got an extended tunnel. And you walk out the tunnel, it's like a flash of light. And all of a sudden the sound hits you 100,000 people. It's like your ears popping. And you try and look up, see where your parents are, your family are, because you know roughly where they're sitting. And you're waving to them. You're doing a long walk to the halfway line where you're going to meet the Queen Mum, Well, the great funny thing is myself, Graham Roberts and Glenn were standing together. And she comes along the line, she said, "Oh, you're all very young, aren't you?" And in unison, we said, "Yes, ma'am, very nervous." She said, "You're all very young, aren't you? Are you nervous?" We all said, "Yes, ma'am, very nervous." So it was funny, really. And also, at that time, this is the first time the game had ever been shown live in South America because of Ozzy and Ricky. So it's something like 800 million, a billion people watching this game, the largest ever audience to that time. It's the 100th Cup final. So, it's shown all around the world in those days. And so, you start thinking about things like you get a bit heavy, and you shouldn't be thinking like that. Luckily for me, Kevin Reeves, their centre forward, nice lad, quiet lad normally. As in the first minute, as I've gone to head a ball away, sort of was it a diagonal ball would come across down the line, he comes across and smashes me in the chops with his elbow. I go down, gap and call him a name, and from then on, I forgot all about where it was. It could have been on the training pitch then. Then you go back into your mould, of what you do every week.
Yeah.
So it was good for me to get that, to get you out of where, thinking where you are and what it is. It was disappointing. We didn't play particularly well. Man City stopped us playing a lot, really, and the conditions helped them. But we had another chance. We drew, and then replay on the following Thursday. So you go back, you're in the cup final. We've had 2 in 5 days, and we go back, and of course it's about Ricky Villa that night. Scores early on, and scores one of the best winning goals ever been in the cup final. After that. And you win the cup, and you all go mad. It's wonderful, It's a wonderful experience. So it was terrific.
Does it sink in straight away? Did it take you a few days, or did you try and just soak it, or is there too much going on to kind of take it in right away?
To be fair, you're probably drinking for 3 days after that.
True.
You don't get drunk, because you're in such a high. And then 3 or 4 days later, we went off to Turkey for an end of season trip.
Brilliant.
We played 2 top teams out there, and had great 10 days out there. Fantastic 10 days out there. So you just don't really think about it. You just do it. Yeah.
You mentioned Graham Roberts. What was it about him that made you so good, and vice versa? How did that partnership work?
It was by accident, really. Graham came to us from non-league, from Weymouth, as Tony Galvin did as well. As young players, never played in the league before, either of them. And Robbo really came as a midfield player. He could play anywhere: centre forward, midfield, full-back. Not really centre half much, to be honest. So he made his debut. He played left back. He played midfield a couple of times, coming on the sub. And all of a sudden, then I don't know whose idea it was, but Berkshire or Shrewsbury, maybe together they hitched up and said, "Look, why don't you 2 play at the back together? We both love to tackle and took no prisoners, And we played together, and it worked. Did a lot of work on the training ground, to be fair, with Steve Perryman and Chris Hughton as a back 4. And it worked for us. It worked. So we got on well. I was probably more of a talker than him, myself and Steve. And it just, we could look, we knew what we was doing. And I don't think any centre forwards ever enjoyed playing against us, to be fair. Well, I know they didn't, because they've told us since.
Yeah. And another man that you mentioned, and someone that my dad has spoke about a lot to me over the years, is Glenn Hoddle. How good was he as a player? And also, what was he like as a guy, Paul?
Glenn Hoddle I'd known since I was 12. Wonderful guy. He's a couple of years older than me. And Glenn's never changed. He's been the same always. Glenn was gifted. Glenn's got a set of golf clubs on both feet, could do anything. When he was England manager, they told one of the English press boys told me that one of his first games, the foreign press was standing with the English press watching a practice match, like a 9-a-side going on, and Glenn had joined in because he had a few injuries, and the foreign press kept saying, "And where is this player? Where is he playing tomorrow night? Does he play left or right side?" He said, "No, he's the coach. No, not him. Him. Where's he playing?" And they kept pointing to Glenn. They thought he was a player. He's playing with Scholes and Beckham and whatever, and he's the best player in the practice match. Wow. Okay, so it's across the pitch, a shorter pitch, but that's how good he was when he was older then. When he was 38, 39 then. As a young man, he was fantastic. His range of passing, and also you couldn't tell what foot he could with, which is unbelievable, Wow. I suppose the nearest modern day one would have been Zidane. He was very 2-footed, wasn't he? Today, I can't think of many players who are naturally 2-footed like he was. I just can't. There isn't any. Harry Kane ain't bad on his left foot, but there's no one I can think of who is as natural 2-footed as Glenn. And Glenn could have played in any era, because of his. Brilliant. By the way, better player now because no one can kick him anymore.
Aye, that's true. Bob Paisley retires the next season with another league trophy. How good was that Liverpool team, Paul? And what was it like playing against Kenny Dalglish and guys like Rush?
Well, people often ask me who's the best players you ever play against, and they think about foreigners and whatever. Dalglish and Rush were the best pair you didn't play against one. You remember two of you played against two of them, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dalglish and Rush were the best pair we ever played against, and I would say that most people from my generation would have said the same. Kenny was a genius, and Rushy should have paid him half his wages every week because he helped make his goals, yeah. But Rushy could run like the wind, yeah. It was brave, didn't stand on nonsense. I mean, ignore all the jibes and whatever. They were a fantastic pair, but they had some great players behind them as well. And their midfield was so strong, Liverpool, physically strong. I mean, you had Souness, Ronnie Whelan, and Jimmy Case, who kicked hard than any centre half I knew or fullbacks I knew. That's why they never got near the defence. Liverpool were a great team. They were a great team, Liverpool, and if you beat them, you'd have to play well, really well, yeah. And we had some great battles with them, great times with them.
What would you try and do to stop Dalglish and Rush? Is there anything that would tend to work more often, or would you just try and kick them off the park?
No, everything really. You try and, when we actually eventually won at Liverpool in '85, first time for bloody since the Titanic sunk, we caught them offside 34 times because we watched the video after.
Yeah.
So you had to play well against them. Really, you had to play really well against them, and be on your met all the time and concentration. But Kenny was a genius. I mean, Kenny was one of the finest players of his generation. Yeah, really, really clever. So they were top class, and they had great players around them, which helped.
You managed to reach the FA Cup final the next season. I think you beat Arsenal on the way to that final. What are your memories of that cup run and then the build up to another FA Cup final?
Well, we never left London until the semi-final, and we beat Villa, champions. We beat Arsenal. We beat Leeds, all 1-0s at home. Tough games, heavy pitches as well. Obviously, because that's January, February, March. They're all heavy pitches, aren't they? Then played Chelsea in the quarter-final at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea in the second division, and we leave the hotel. We're staying quite nearby, and the police escort takes us down Earls Court Road on a Saturday afternoon, one-way street. So we don't get to the ground till 3:05. We've all changed on the coach, by the way. Yeah, the club get fined eventually afterwards for being late. We left the bloody hotel at 1:30. Should never have gone that way. Anyway, we get there and we have to wear Chelsea shorts as well because the referee said our shorts clash with their shorts. So we're actually wearing Chelsea's white shorts in our all white kit. And they score after about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. A great shot, actually. I forget who scored, but it was a great shot, 30-yarder. Mickey Fillery scores, that's right, free kick. And that sort of woke us up. And half time we'd come off with one down. Anyway, we have a few chosen words in the dressing room, and shut the crowd up. We come out second half, and for 25 minutes, Glenn Ozzie and Mickey Hazard just keep the ball. They can't get it off us, and we go 3-1 up. They score one near the end, but we slaughtered them really second half. So that was one of our toughest games, I would say, getting there, but in a different type of way with the crowd and whatever. Yeah. Semi-final with Leicester. They're in the second division, top of the second division, about to get promotion. They don't turn up. They're a load of kids, including a young Lineker. They don't turn up really. We win 2-0, easy game. Then we got another second division club in the final, QPR. It was Terry Venables, who was a great family friend and lovely man, And again we draw. We draw when this. By the way, we'd had 70 games that year, 70, with a squad of 15. So 4 or 5 of us playing the cup final. We're having to have injections, groins, knees, ankles, whatever. Yeah. And eventually we win the replay 1-0 and it didn't feel as great. But we should have won more that year. We finished third in the league, got beaten in the League Cup final in extra time by Liverpool, which we should have won. But we're a better team in the normal time. And Barcelona kick us out of the Cup Winners' Cup in the semi-final. Kick us out, by the way, not the other way around, yeah? So, we should have won that trophy, really. And we had a great side in '82, a great side. But we lost 3 or 4 weeks with the snow in January. And that meant we had to play at the end of the season something like, 17 games in like 39 days or something. We're playing Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. It was ridiculous. And that didn't help, especially with the pitches, the physicality. The medical's not great, is it? And we're having injections to play.
You've mentioned him previously, and Ray Clemence plays in that cup final, and obviously he passed away pretty recently. I mean,
November, yeah.
I've read a lot of stuff and listened to a lot of stories about Ray Clemence. I mean, but what was it like to play with him?
Well, me, Clem, and Glenn Hoddle were three musketeers. We were very much social. We used to sit together at the back of the bus.
Yeah.
Plenty of wine on our table on the way home, because in those days, of course, we're drinkers. Everyone drinks, and especially on our coach. We used to get a 5-course meal. We had 2 stewards on our coach. We had fine wine on our coach. It was a bit different at Spurs. And Clem was a massive influence on all of us. He'd come from Liverpool, where he'd won everything and done everything. He came and just changed our attitude. He put us onto another professional level, and I can't say any more higher than that. He was magnificent, and certainly one of my closest friends. Me and Ozzy went to the funeral with the family, because there was only allowed 15 of us in there. Yeah. And it was very sad, because we lost him too early. He'd been a great fighter. 15 years he had cancer, but he to play behind, he was fantastic. All I would say how good he was, if he'd have been playing in Mexico, Maradona would never have gone for that and handled it. Yeah, or if he had just scored, they'd have carried Maradona off in the stretcher.
Yeah.
So that's how good Clem was. You don't speak to anyone. Clem for me was the best in the world at that time.
Amazing, brilliant. I mean, you win 2 FA Cups. How great was it to be out and about as a Tottenham player, and you've got 2 trophies already?
Yeah, I'm 22 years old. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and obviously socially, I was always in the West End of London. And great social life. So it was enjoyable. It was great times to be a player. Yeah, there was no mobiles, no photos being taken, and it was a good time for us all. But I mean, it was we were hungry. We were hungry for more. And unfortunately, I then had an operation because of all the games that in the cup final. Whatever, I missed. I started off playing, but then because of no scanning machines in those days, they didn't know what was wrong with my groin. I finished up. I tore the adductor, so I missed the first few months of the season, and it didn't help. So next season was a difficult one for us, because I think we were knackered from the year before, because we didn't really sign many players, and that cost us.
Would you mix with the other London team's players? I mean, you probably see them out and about, and would you sit and have a beer and talk to them?
Well, to be fair, Charlie Nicholas and Graham Ricks, who used to lived quite near me, both of them. So on every Sunday we would drink together. Noel Quinn later on. Tony Woodcock. Yeah, we would mix a lot with the Arsenal players. We were all quite close, actually. Not on the pitch, but
Aye. 1984, you go on to reach the UEFA Cup final. You have a great run. You beat Bayern, you beat Feyenoord. What are your memories of that cup run?
All I would say, and to show how good it is, every team we played that year won their domestic league. That's how strong that competition was, that UEFA Cup. Yeah,
brilliant.
It was a bigger cup than the European Cup. Because in the European Cup, you generally got a couple of easy games. You're in the quarter-final. Unless you're unlucky, you get to the semi-final. Yeah. And then you might play a decent side then. UEFA Cup, you could play anyone early. What we did, we played Bayern Munich and Feyenoord in the first early rounds and an Irish side. But all I'm saying, every team we played, Austria Vienna, Hajduk Split, Anderlecht, of course, was a great young side. Every one of them won their domestic league that year. What I would say is that, the quarter-final, semi-final and final, Clemence, Hoddle and Dalglish were all injured. So if you just said at the start of the season, you're going to win the UEFA Cup without your 3 best players in the quarter-final, semi-final and final, you said you're joking, you're mad. But no chance.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But we did. We changed our tactics a little bit more, went a bit more direct, and we did it. The disappointing thing is out in Anderlecht in Brussels, when the young Spurs supporter got shot and killed. And a lot of hostility there with police and army and whatever. And there was 9,000 Spurs fans in the stadium, probably 10,000 outside. It's the end where I scored the goal as well, my UEFA Cup final goal, yeah. We should have wrapped the game up out there. Archibald and Mark Falco probably missed 3 or 4 great chances. We should have come back winning 3 or 4-1. And the funny thing is, Tony Parks, who was a hero in the second leg for the penalty saves, he drops a clanger the last minute and they equalised. we came back on the plane feeling really gutted. We should have wrapped the whole tie up, the final. But we couldn't. I mean, we didn't do it, and I suppose it made it more exciting for the second leg, of which we drew and penalties. But we were a better side anyway over the 2 legs, far better side than they were.
Anderlecht had some top players, Van den Berg, and I think Schifo was a Belgian great as well. I mean, how good were they two players?
Schifo was a fantastic. That was the first time we all saw him. He was only 18 then, yeah. Wonderful player. They had quite an experienced team as well, a lot of good players in there, and Anderlecht. Look at their record. They've been, the top team in Belgium for so many years. But we had a good side as well. So we wanted to make up for losing the semi-final really against Barcelona. We thought we should have won that. We were the best team in the competition by far that year in '82, and we got kicked out with naivety as well, a bit naive maybe some of us, the players, and we weren't going to make the same mistake again. So we won that, and and won it well. Really, we were by far the best team in the competition.
How was the celebrations after that? Do you remember where you went that night, or the few days after? I should say.
No, we stayed in the stadium and had a restaurant upstairs and out upstairs. I remember Glenn who didn't play joined me, Glenn and Graham Ricks having dinner together with our wives at the time. So it's funny, even Graham Ricks, an Arsenal player, had come to watch us play, yeah, and celebrate with us after. It was a bit low key. It was nowhere like the cup finals really. I think we'd all, it'd been a long season, and it was just another trophy we won. We were getting used to it, it was what we did. Unfortunately, it didn't last that long. We should have won more, really a lot more.
Yeah. It seems strange to ask, even though you've got, Tottenham fans now would take 2 FA Cups and a UEFA Cup. Do you think that team underachieved? I know you've alluded to it already.
Yeah, we did. We had a great chance to win the league in 2 years, 82 and 85. 85, we got robbed in Madrid of the Uefa Cup again. When the referee just let a Mark Falco goal, nothing wrong with it. And we later found out, he was crooked. He took money, which was happening quite a lot in those days with referees. You read books since or whatever. Forest, I know, went out against Anderlecht when the referee was bribed. So the following year, we had a great tussle with Everton when we finished runners up, and we should have won that. But at the end of the day, we run out of players again. Strikers at the end of the season, injuries. We need a little bit of luck at the end of the season with your injuries and stuff when the runnings counts, yeah. But we were top of the league for quite a while that year, and 85 was probably our best year of trying to win the league, and we didn't. But we came really close that year.
I'm going to put my Scotland tat on again and ask about Steve Archibald. How good a player was Archibald?
Well, he left us after the Uefa Cup because the club wanted the money. We had an arsehole of a chairman, Scholar, who wanted loads of money all the time and nearly took the club bankrupt. And he sold Steve to Barcelona, and really, which for me was a mistake. Those things happen. Steve was a good player. Steve was very selfish. He was different. He was a bit of a loner on his own, but he was a good striker. He knew where the ball was. And, of course, having Glenn Lozzie, he was like getting service at the Ritz for him and Garth Crooks and Mark Falco, yeah? They had the best service in the world. So, pretty difficult. But he was quick, strong. He could finish well. He was a top player, Steve Archibald.
Around that time, Paul, were you ever in England squads, or was there ever any conversations after the cup finals?
Yeah. When I was younger, Terry Venables was the under-21 manager, and he was a family friend, and he picked me for the under-21s, but me and Graham Roberts, because obviously we were a great pair then, and we had to pull out because Spurs had a European match, and that took preference in those days. They had European matches with under-21 tournament games. Yeah, ridiculous. And so we had to pull out. So who knows? Maybe it might have happened, but I didn't play and didn't get selected again. But there were a lot of good centre halves around when I played. Some top centre halves. It wasn't like today when there's hardly any. There was in the first division then there was at least 10 top centre halves.
How did you end up leaving Spurs? Was it a mutual decision? How did that come about, Paul?
No, what happened is Peter Shreves took over from Berkey and did well in the first year, and the second year not so well. We had a lot of injuries, and then the club decided to get rid of him, and they brought in David Pleat, who had his own way of managing. own way of doing things. Didn't like our sort of Tottenham mafia, if you like, our independence and whatever. And he got rid of half our team early on. And I was obviously one of them he didn't want. Graham Roberts, Mark Falco, Tony Galvin, Chris Hughton. I mean, there's so many he got rid of. Ridiculous. We were all in our prime at 27, 28 years old, yeah? And during that year, which we should have won the double, we won nothing in the end because of him, just getting rid of everybody. So when I realised it was time to go, I wasn't going to play anymore. I wanted to still play. I had 2 years left on the contract, which still stayed on, good money. But I wanted to leave, and Charlton came calling, who I knew, London. I didn't want to leave London, and they were struggling really at the bottom, and I felt that was a bit of a challenge. So that's why I went there, for the challenge, really. My friends thought I was mad. In fact, if I'd have stayed at Spurs another 6 months, completely would have left. Terry Venables come in, it would have been a problem. But
yeah,
when Terry did take over eventually, he said, "Where's all your squad gone? And where's all the underbelly?" He goes, "Remember, he sold 5 boys to Norwich, who eventually finished second in the league 2 years later. So all the underbelly got sold as well." So between Scholar and Pleat, they didn't do us any favours. They ruined our club. We built what we'd built up. What had been built up before. And also, Scholar sacked Berkshire in the quarter-final of the Uefa Cup. How can you sack a manager? You just won one of the most prestigious trophies in the world. You sack him.
Incredible.
Ridiculous. So incredible, yeah, absolutely incredible, yeah.
You're held in such high regard by the Tottenham fans. I mean, how do you look back on your time with Tottenham?
I had a great time. I mean, it was my club. It's still my club. I'm the ambassador today, and I really love the fans. Some of them become my great friends over the years. Yeah, it's a special club. Hasn't done so well trophy-wise, but the chairman's built an unbelievable stadium, best stadium in the world. Our training ground is second to none. It's a wonderful place. It's everything. If you can't make a player out of what our training ground now has got, you're struggling. There's something wrong with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing we're short of is trophies. And we've had to be careful with players in the last few years. When you build $1 billion complex, it's something that's to hold, isn't it? And Arsenal did the same thing when they built theirs with players. But I think we're getting more players together now. This will be a strange summer because there's not a lot of money around. But I mean, we will get some defenders that we need. We're desperate for a right back and a centre half, desperate, and no doubt we'll get those in the summer, and maybe another midfield player to create, and then we'll go for it because we've got some fantastic strikers. We've got 2 of the best in the world, yeah, in Kane and Sonny, yeah. So it's still a great place. The support has never wavered. It's just got bigger and bigger and bigger. The support. We've got 62,000 sellout. The atmosphere is fantastic, and we earn a lot and take a lot of money. Well, we used to before the crowds were stopped. Yeah.
You mentioned going to Charlton. You also spent some time at Watford, where I think you reached the playoff semi-final.
Yeah, I did. I reached the playoff final with Charlton, the first ever playoff final, which is when you finish third from bottom in the first division, you played against the teams who finished third, fourth, and fifth in the second division. So we ended up beating Leeds in the third game because we won 1-0 at home, lost 1-0 away. We had a third game at Birmingham St Andrews and we beat them 2-1 extra time. So we stayed up and they stayed down in the second division. So I played in the first ever playoff final ever, which is a 2-legged affair. And then the following year I scored the goal that sent Chelsea down for Charlton, the last game of the season. And then I went to Watford and I played another playoff final, which we got beat by Blackburn. A good, a Blackburn side that eventually went on and won the league a few years later. Yeah. So so that was a good time. Watford. And, again, I wanted to be a bit nearer. Charlton was in South London. It was a terrible journey, and Watford was a bit nearer home. And obviously I knew Elton John, and it felt great to go there. But I wasn't there too long. Because once we lost, didn't get up, they had to get rid of a lot of us because of the wage bill and stuff. Yeah, this is when finances were tough. A lot of clubs.
And you spent some time at Bournemouth with Harry Redknapp. I mean, obviously a character and a football manager that everyone respects. What was it like to play under Harry Redknapp?
Well, he was a friend, really. I used to sit next to him on the coach on the away games, on the away trips. I've known Harry since I was 13.
Yeah.
And we had a great time together. And we had a good little young side there. And his lad played. Jamie came in the team and played. A young Gavin Peacock who went on to better things. So we had some good youngsters, some senior players there. And we enjoyed playing in the second division. It was good, we were batting above our average. Obviously, small crowds. But Bournemouth was a lovely place to live. I had a home down there. in Sandbanks, and it was fantastic. You know, and really enjoyed that part of the world. And unfortunately, Harry had a bad accident at the World Cup in 1990, and he was never the same after. Well, he was the same eventually, but it took him a while to get back to normal. Yeah, after he nearly died in 1990 World Cup, and so then it was time for me to leave. Really, my knee was starting to struggle by then. The knee operation I'd had in '84 before the Uefa Cup, and it started to give me pain and whatever. And Swansea came in, and I thought, 2-year contract. I knew Terry Yorth, who was the manager, and he still let me commute from London, stay there for a couple of nights. So it seemed perfect. They was also in the second division then, yeah. So I went there for like a final swan song, pardon the pun, yeah.
So we're now going to move on to your best 11 teammates that you've played with. I know it must have been difficult. Obviously, you've played with a lot of great players, but if you can do your best for us, that would be great.
Well, I've been thinking about this, as you said to me before. I think about it. All I would say is that the 82 side I played in, with Ray Clemence, Steve Perryman, Graham Roberts, Chris Hughton, Mickey Hazard, Glenn Hoddle, Ozzy Ardiles, Tony Galvin, Archibald and Crooks. That would be the best. That would have been our best ever side, Tottenham, that I played in. We were a match for anybody then. So we had some other fringe players as well, like Mark Falco, Paul Price, Gary Brook. But I mean, the 11 there we were fantastic, and I just wish we could have all stayed fit at the right time. That was the problems in those days, was injuries, wasn't it? But that was we had some great times then with that 11, and so we could beat anyone.
Who would be the manager of that team? Who was the best manager that you played under?
Well, I suppose Berkshire was the most successful, but it was a great double act between him and Peter Shreves, because Peter was do things that Keith wouldn't do, say whatever. You always need partnerships. You look at any managerial, not so much now, but how it used to be. Clough and Peter Taylor. There's always another one, wasn't there? And so, I mean, Berkshire with Shreves was a great pairing, because they worked well off each other. Yeah, one was good at one thing, one was good at the other. Keith was a straight Yorkshireman, quite boring and dour, and Pete was the cocky Londoner. Yeah, so it helped. And we had 4 or 5 of our players were Londoners, so it helped. So I would say both of them again, because you need two, and you got one to rub off on the other.
And the last question from me is, how would you like to be remembered as a footballer?
Just that I gave my all. I think 100% player. And I'm a bit of a character, and I don't think anyone enjoyed playing against me, which was nice. I'll take that always as a compliment.
Definitely.
But the nice thing is today is that the players I played against, when I see them, and I see a lot of them quite often, we cuddle and hug because we realise we played in special times. It's a great time to play, late 70s and 80s. A wonderful time to play when you can enjoy the game, have a drink and whatever, and shake hands after the game. And the money was okay. It wasn't bad. It's not like today, of course. But it was a great time to play and a great time to be a footballer. And I suppose I achieved my boyhood dreams, which was nice. And today I've still got great friends. Those Spurs players are almost still my best friends. We meet up all the time, or used to, before the lockdown,
Yeah.
Golfing, lunches, Spurs every week. So we still see each other a lot, and we're all very close. We're like brothers, really.
Brilliant. And what are you up to these days, Paul? I know that obviously you do a lot with Tottenham, but you also run your own business.
Yeah, I'm involved in the business. I'm the new business director of a waste company called GWC. We do waste and recycling, and also landfill. So we're involved in that business, which is as you can imagine, last year's been even busier with everyone being at home, whatever. So mainly plastics, paper, and cardboard, but it's a lovely business, an honest business. And I had a city career for quite a few years after football, but this is a bit more rural and down to earth, and I'm enjoying it. I'll enjoy the people, and it's going okay. We're doing all right. And of course, it's the future.
Where can people find your business, Paul? Have you got social media pages and a website?
Just go on GWC Limited. Yeah, we're based in South London, in Erith, where a lot of the waste companies are. And, we're always open to business. And we hardly ever say no. We can do most things.
Yeah. Brilliant. Paul, I won't take up any more of your time, but I just want to say, for someone that's had the career that you've had, it's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you and hear some of your stories. And I just want to thank you for giving me your time and coming on my podcast tonight.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Paul. You take care, all right? Cheers.
Thank you.
Top man.
Okay.